Hello, everybody, and welcome to Community Forum. My name is Ron Vecchia, and here we are again. This is kind of like, what was the expression that Yogi Berra had about it's deja vu all over again? My guest today is my special friend and a good friend, Chief Delehanty, who happens to be the interim town manager for the town of Winthrop. I thought we would get together. Didn't do many shows during COVID and so forth, and everybody's been kind of in a closet for a while. But we're starting to get things back to normal. I thought it'd be nice to get an update on some of the issues that the town is facing right now. So welcome, Terry.
Thank you.
First and foremost, I mean, you were in the light all year long with COVID. You and your office and the health department. What do we have as far as an update on what's happening in Winthrop in terms of COVID?
Yeah. Thank you for having me again. As we often do, like to get together and update the community on what's going on. And certainly it's been a tough year. It was our first live time in the studio for about maybe a year and a quarter.
Exactly.
So again, we're socially distanced,
Yep.
So we're not right on top of each other. It's important to remind people of those protocols still. As we see the 4th of July, we have a little bit of a spike here locally as well as throughout the Commonwealth, and that's being attributed to the July 4th weekends.
Right.
And that was one of the considerations we had when we didn't want to do the fireworks, was we were inviting too many people to Winthrop. Especially with other communities canceling their fireworks. We would have had probably triple the amount of people, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to act responsibly, but still allow people to enjoy the 4th. So again, we had a great team throughout COVID. We had the fire department, the police department, public health department, and certainly that collaboration worked well for the community. Again, a bunch of volunteers with the food bank, and Sean Driscoll from Parks and Recs helping run the food bank.
Right.
The senior center sending over staff. So really, we had a great team to get us through COVID. We're glad to see us starting to somewhat return to normal, but cautiously return to normal. Right. And certainly people that have been vaccinated right now, at least with one shot in Winthrop, it's about 75%. With 68% is with both vaccinations. So we're starting to see those numbers creep up. Very proud of our citizens here, all stepping forward. 80% or above would be even better. 75 is a great number. So as we start to see people returning to school, some colleges and universities are making it mandatory to go to their college or university to be vaccinated. So our numbers, you might see it slightly raised through those efforts as well. But it's still very important. You still see people very sick that haven't had the shots that get COVID. And this new Delta variant spreads quicker and faster than the other variants. So we just got to be careful. We got to be cautious. We have a great team of public health that's tracking this for us, and they'll be able to alert us early on, not just what's happening here in Winthrop, but what's happening in the state. As people travel and travel gets back to normal, we're going to have to expect there'll be some upticks and some spikes. But how do we manage them? If you're having your functions at home, have them outdoors. Don't have them inside. I think that's still the message. Although people come over, you have a small group of people, you can have them in your house. I'm not saying no one can have anyone in their house, but I'm just saying let's do it responsibly. Let's try to keep the numbers down so we can get back to school. The most important thing is to see our children back in the schools in September, and keep them in the schools. It'll help out all parents.
Now, I understand the CDC is recommending when the kids go back to school that all kids and teachers and administrators wear masks. And I don't know where that's all going to stand, in Massachusetts, but that's going to be their recommendation.
Yeah, that's the CDC recommendation. Again, it'll be up to the local health, the state health department, the state Mass Department of Public Health, and our local health department to figure that out with, obviously the input of the superintendent of schools, and the school Department of Education could have a different mandate than we decide to do locally here, but that mandate might still affect our school children. So again, I think it's about being responsible and keeping the kids and the teachers safe and in the school for a long period of time, instead of going and then having these spikes and have to recess them back to online learning.
We'll go through the whole cycle again.
Online learning affected education. It affected the people's ability to learn and to read. And we're aware of that. Myself and the superintendent are talking about those things and how could we supplement programs to catch those kids up that are lacking in reading. So it's something that we're aware of, we're concentrating on, and we have a great collaboration between myself and the superintendent.
It's always been good, the school department
Yeah.
and certainly the town side. As far as testing, I understand Revere is still open for testing.
So Suffolk Downs is still open for testing. Meredith Hurley is referring everyone to Suffolk Downs for testing. So that's still a great site to do. It's not busy at all. You can zoom in, zoom out pretty quickly. You can register online and make it even quicker.
Cool.
So it's right across the line. We're fortunate to have that location.
That's good. That's good. An update on the unfortunate circumstances that surrounding that day about 2 or 3 weeks ago in a town that, you know, is etched into everybody's mind now. It's almost going to be like, where were you when Kennedy was assassinated? I'm dating myself now, but where were you when certain things happened, when the towers fell? Now it's like, you know, do you remember that day in Winthrop where we had the incident where 2 residents were, you know, taken from, you know, from us? What's happening within the community to help those, whether it's a child, whether it's a person that lives in the neighborhood, close friends to some of the victims? Do we have an ongoing program still in town to help those people deal with it?
Yes, we do. But I just want to back up a little bit. I just want to applaud the response from police, fire, EMS.
No doubt.
You know, there was off-duty officers coming that live in Winthrop, from the state police, from MBTA police that reside here in a residence here, responded into that zone without request because they live here and they were residents here and they heard what was going on. You had the state police respond. Revere Police was the third cruiser on scene because we have that joint dispatch center. So once they heard shots fired, 2 people down, they automatically started dispatching cruisers into Winthrop. Again, Kelly McCormick, captain from East Boston, have a great relationship with him over the years. He responded personally himself and brought 30 additional cruisers with him to help secure the crime scene. And so NUMLEC, Northeast Metropolitan Law Enforcement Council, we pay about $2,500 a year to belong to them. They sent resources to relieve Boston so Boston could get back to Boston. So it worked fabulously, it worked well. It's unfortunate that we had to activate a response like that. But again, you know, we've been practicing with school lockdowns, threat assessments in the school, and we kind of just took what we've planned all the time for the school and put it out to the middle of the street and implemented it. So the collaborations with the school played a big role in how we responded. Still plays a big role in how we respond to the needs of the children who, witnessed you know, a body in the street that was lifeless. And how do we deal with those kids? There was one child that was in the middle of the zone itself when the suspect got into the back seat of that car and then left that car. You know, these people will have lifelong trauma issues to be addressed. They'll be lifelong if we don't address them. So you know, after the dust had settled in my brain for about 3 hours, I woke up at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning and immediately started talking to Sacco Giorgietti and Meredith Hurley and Lisa Howard. And so what are we going to do? We're taking care of the police, we're taking care of the fire. We had stress counselors respond into both stations that night. And they were doing follow-up with those officers that were on scene, and the firefighters and EMS people on scene. What are we going to do with the community? So again, Captain McCormick called and offered the East Boston Trauma Team. I connected them with Meredith, and we started to say, okay, we're going to do door-to-door knocks in the destruction zone, we called it. So every place on Shirley Street, we worked our way down to Hawthorne. We got a knock on their door by someone from public health, a counselor, a police officer assigned to public health, or the public health director herself. And they talked, and they gave them referral materials, gave them numbers that they could be reached at. That Wednesday, they had a drop-in at the senior center, and they serviced like 54 people at the senior center in an hour and a half. Really? The DA's office sent in calming dogs and comfort dogs to be at the senior center. The school sent their adjustment counselors into the senior center. And then, from there, we knew we still had people that we probably missed. There was certain people that were at the temple that were dealing with the temple directly, with some of the public health issues there. So Mayor Tully has been in conversation with them. Lisa Howard early on said, let us do what we do best, and that's take care of children.
Yep.
So Riverside, an agency she contracts with, and the adjustment counselors, they started to work the children immediately that were affected that day. And then, of course, any child that resided within the Governor Park zone, they started working with them, and also BIPOC community as well, in the children, with children from different nationalities and minorities that might be more affected by this event than other residents. So I think we were all affected by this event. Certainly, it'll be a day that is burnt into my mind for the rest of my life.
Yep.
To see what we saw on Shirley Street that day resembled something of a war zone. Never did we ever expect that to happen here in Winthrop, and I think has been the mentality of many communities, not just Winthrop. Not here, not here, not here. And years ago, Chief Goldstein was here, and he was the one that kind of started that. Let's work with the schools, and let's get the lockdown program going, and threat assessment, and started to change the mind of the police department. And then, of course, we carried that forward with NUMLUC, and having NUMLUC as one of our partners, and we're obligated to respond out to them. NUMLUC was one of the agencies that responded in when we had that missing child 2 years ago on first day of school. And they sent 30 dogs in to help me locate that child. So we're prepared. We never want to activate and use the resources we have, but we're prepared. So Meredith Hurley, the superintendent of schools, Sago Jajarian, still working the public mental health aspect and trauma-related injury aspect of this crisis. We'll continue to work that in the next 6 to 9 months. There's a long-term plan that has been activated and is going to be put in place by Meredith Hurley, and that's we're going to work with And Still We Rise to come in, actually give treatment to the victims' families immediately. They will work also coincide with the schools and Riverside, and they'll also reach out to the BIPOC community, and then we'll have community meetings in general for all community members. So it's a staged approach, and we're trying to get to the most affected first, and then triage it outward. So anyone that has any concerns can call the public health director or the public health office. This is something that just doesn't go away when the crime scene tape gets taken down. And I think it's important to remember and to reiterate that one person's ideology does not represent Winthrop.
Exactly.
What represents Winthrop is the response we had for the vigil.
Absolutely.
What represents Winthrop is the donations that happened privately to these families so they could bury their loved ones. And no one's looking for credit for that. And that's the amazing part of Winthrop. The donations that came into the police department, the food that came in and was sponsored and sent over for the night of the vigil for all the law enforcement agencies we had here in Winthrop. We had to do things differently than we normally do. Security had to be differently. Security will have to be differently from this point forward. And it's certainly, a back and forth between me and the deputy chief. And he came over from Revere, and they did security differently on their Halloweens and their public events. And I said, I've always said, this is Winthrop, this is not Revere, it's not Chelsea. But in the long term, and looking back, he was right. I'm just grateful that we didn't have a big event with a lot of people on the street that could have been more victims. And I think one of the things I think people have to remember, the DA, in my opinion, has taken some hits on trying to introduce race into this equation. I have had conversations with the district attorney's office early on Saturday night, Saturday afternoon. Then we met Sunday at the scene. That is something that we said it was obvious. Race was a factor in this particular person's crime. And we wanted to be transparent, and we wanted to be upfront with the community and with the people of the community. And I think that's very important to remember. It was certainly based on facts, not emotion, and not assumptions. It was based on fact that this person bypassed at least 6 white people and didn't shoot them, and shot 2 black people. So I just wanted to end with that to reiterate that this was a race-based crime. This was a hate crime, and it did happen in our community. Again, this person's ideology is not what this community is about, and he didn't reside here. He resided here. He didn't grow up here. He wasn't schooled here. So those things are important.
Absolutely.
Do we all learn a lesson from this person's hate? Can we treat each other better? Can we have dialogue without having anger? Those are the things we need to take a look at as a community, and try to make sense and try to make good on Ramona and Dave's death.
Exactly.
And what good can come from that? How can we as a community make good on that so they didn't die in vain? And I think treating people with respect, we always don't have to agree, but we need to treat each other with respect.
Exactly. Well, I know as a former head elected official in this town, I was extremely proud of the way you conducted yourself, the fire department, the police department, all involved. I think it was done professionally. When I saw you on camera on the news conferences and so forth, I said, there's a person representing the town of Winthrop in the best fashion possible. So congratulations on addressing it.
I appreciate it, but I get to be the face, and I got a lot of great people behind me.
I know you do.
From
and I was going to ask you
all the departments.
How are the troops, so to speak, the men and women of the department? How are they doing now? Is the individual that was responsible for bringing him down, is he back to work, or is he still out?
No, he's still out on administrative leave.
Right. Is that pending the investigation?
No, that has nothing to do with the investigation. Again, knowing how these incidents affect people,
psychologically,
and affect people over time, right away. It's important to spend time with your family, and that we give them that time. When him and his wife decide he's ready to return, he'll be welcomed back into the police department. DA Rollins has said, I don't have to wait for the investigation to be completed. I can bring him back. I will bring him back when him and his family decide it's time for him to come back.
That's good. That's good to hear. All right, on a positive note, something that started way back when I was on the council and you were the interim town manager then, which goes back.
Deja vu.
Yeah. What did Yogi say? Deja vu all over again. The Center Business District, things are coming together finally.
Yeah.
The roads are all paved. There will be new sidewalks. And the plan is still to have the French Square back redesigned. Much bigger.
I don't want to say it's all paved because it's not. What people see down there is not the final coat. It's a binder coat.
Yep.
We went through in the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, and replaced the pipes and the drainage, so the drainage is appropriate now, and no one, you can't see that, so no one appreciates that, right? But that's, millions of dollars have been spent in this project, and people should know, we did our best to make sure it doesn't flood, that the sewer system is working in all the business districts areas, and that we can flow water to these
They don't realize
businesses.
that the general thrust of this project was to alleviate the flooding.
Yeah.
And then all the window dressing is extra.
Yeah.
It's something that that they're going to get as a result of it. But
so over by Putnam and Jefferson, that should not flood anymore. We put these big, huge pipes in there that we can store water in there. And the problem is, what really happens is when there's high tide and we have a rainstorm, we can't push out of Donovan's Beach. Right. So that water will flow naturally over to Donovan's and it gets discharged. When we get high tide, you get no discharge. So we built retention ability in the pipes that we put at the center.
Now, do we have a test over this? This has been the wettest July. Every day it's been raining.
Yes. It
Some
has.
days has been, pouring.
Yeah.
Has it got a good test? I mean,
Yeah, I've seen no negative effect
That's good.
of any flooding in the center. I've been through there myself in some of the rainiest days
Mm-hmm.
because I worry about that, and I want to make sure that hey, we get a sufficient job here,
Right.
and the people don't have to worry about that. So the binder coat's been laid down. The curbing and sidewalks will be next.
Mm-hmm.
So over the next week, you'll start to see that mobilization. And I believe they'll start at Somerset and Cottage and work their way into the center down through there.
Okay.
So you'll start to see the new sidewalks coming to fruition, and the new curb settings will come to fruition. They're telling me December is what they anticipate. Now, there might be some plantings that have to happen in the spring.
Right.
Because of depending on the weather.
Right.
But we don't want to rush the plantings and have dead trees.
Exactly.
We want to make sure that we have the appropriate time to plant. So that's the only thing that might carry over into the spring, but right now their DPW director and the contractors are advising me December they should be finished by December.
Mm-hmm. I mean, all in all, I think the project went fairly smooth. I mean, I know it was it fell in line with the COVID.
Yeah.
So a lot of the businesses which were being negatively impacted because of COVID, really, if there was ever a time for the construction to happen, it was then.
It was,
So we kind of lucked out. We
Yeah.
really did, because our biggest concern was the loss of business down there. The business losses that we did realize, I think, was generally because of COVID, not anything to do with the project itself.
You're correct, and we've been working with the contractors and Steve Calla to say during lunch hour, can we get those ones that are open for lunch streets done early in the day so they're open for lunch. So we've been trying to make sure that we circulate our streets thoughtfully to less impact the businesses that are open during the day.
That's good. That's good. All right. One of the agenda items that's been a hot topic around the town of Winthrop has been the solid waste and recycling program and the new trash bins that went out. Can we kind of like encapsulize what the needs, what the story was, why we needed to go in this direction?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Deficit and budget spending. Bottom line, that's what happened. We looked at the trash contract. We own tipping fees, which means we own the weight that we put into the stream.
Right.
Capital has given us a flat rate for pickup services for recyclable and trash. So they are just responsible for picking up. They get weighed, we pay the weight. Before Capital assumed everything. They assumed weight, so we didn't care.
It was just a flat.
It was a flat
thing.
A flat payment we made to Capital Waste, and they worried about the tipping fees. Well, they, as a business, looked at their profit margins and everything else and said this is not sustainable. So the tipping fees came back to the town, and that happened, I believe, last July. Right. The first year that council supplanted the budget for trash by adding more money to the trash. That's not sustainable either. Our reserve funds are only so big. And over time, you don't want to put down your reserve funds because it affects your bond ratings. So at that point, we had to look at what reasonable fee would make up the difference in the trash tipping fees. So we looked at that. The council voted a $160 fee in. Early on, working between two administrations here, so I had to piece some stuff together. That we looked at that and said the 160 will help if the weight stayed the same. So we can't have any increases. If the weight increases, then we lose money, then we have to raise the fee. So we said, let's put out our own barrels, because it helps capital. It's easier for them to load and unload, and it's consistency, and we know that person's paid their 160 for the barrel in the pickup service, right? So those are the reasons we put it out. Now the council votes the 160. That 160 fee will go into effect, has actually gone into effect. They will be billed in October. I didn't want to bill people on July 1st, and I don't want to bill them around the holidays. So I asked Steve Calla and the treasurer's office to have that bill go out October 1st.
Okay.
So you can expect that bill to go out in October. we'll expect payment for that so we can run the program.
That's a one-time fee?
That is a yearly reoccurring fee.
Okay. Once a year?
Once a year. So it was some talk about doing it quarterly, doing it yearly. I rather the yearly fee, and we'll work with people, obviously, that are in need or can't afford a fee, or we'll work with them. So we've asked went to public health. So we asked rules and ordinances to look at an ordinance for trash and update our ordinance for trash. The Board of Health does have jurisdiction over trash under the Board of Health Code as well as our ordinance. So the rules and ordinance is working with the Board of Health to now formulate an ordinance for trash. There's many different options that they could actually utilize through that, and that could be from we're only picking up one barrel to any overages you got to put in a bag that you go to the stores and buy a bag for your overage, so we know that color bag is the only bag that gets picked up. Not saying they're going to do any of these, but these are these ideas are on the table.
Yep.
So if people have concerns and want to weigh in, send an email, call into the Board of Health meetings. You can pass it through the rules and ordinance of the council if they want input in this process. But again, we're watching the tipping fees. We have a spreadsheet. Each month the tipping fees were last year. We're comparing them to this year to make sure we're staying on track. It's an enterprise account. That enterprise account has to be self-sufficient by the actual rule of law that affects the enterprise accounts, and we want it to be efficient. What we really want is the people to start separating their food waste from their trash. And I know there's a couple, at least one company in Winthrop that has over 200 clients that actually pick up their food waste once a week.
Yeah.
Food waste is about 40% of my weight.
Wow.
So if I can get rid of food waste out of your trash, I can save money and I don't have to raise fees.
Yeah. Talk
So
about
that's-
recycling. They could recycling and use it in their garden and so forth.
Right. They come and they actually compost it. The company, Black Earth, is one of the companies
right?
I know of. They take it outside, they compost it, and they resell that composting. So we're in talks with them. We have a trash coordinator that was brought on to educate people, talk to people, try to involve the schools in educational programming of having the schools separate their food waste from their trash, from their recyclables, so decrease my tipping fees.
Right. That's good. Well, we have less than 2 minutes. Can you give me a 1 minute, just a recap of the ferry? Because I understand they're not working on the weekends. We lose our grants. Did we lose some of
So
the grant
we
money?
haven't, those grants you have to apply for each year. So some of the applications went in later than they should have. And so those are in now. The kind of earmarks, they're really not grants. DEP gives us usually 150.
Right.
DOT was giving us around 180. And of course the city of Quincy contributes as well.
Right.
So all of that stuff is in play. We haven't gotten commitments from anyone.
Okay.
So we started running the figures of what our loss ratio is per week, and we're losing about $6,000 on the ferry. And that's running it 5 days a week, not 7 days a week. We have fewer captains. We're unable to get more captains, so we can't run it 7 days a week. So that's a problem as well. I think the employment market, we're feeling it as well as the private sector employers are feeling it. Not many people want to come and do this ferry service. So some people, shifted and didn't come back or weren't asked to come back for various reasons. Right. We want to make sure that we're running a safe ferry, an effective ferry. But again, we have to figure out our business plan.
Okay.
Government
So it's
shouldn't be involved in running private transportation.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'll leave it at that.
All right.
But tomorrow, tomorrow night at the council meeting, my intern will be given a full-blown presentation on the monetary and budget implications for the ferry.
Okay. Excellent. Terry, as always, thank you for what you do for the town. And that's going to do it right for now. Anyway, I'm Ron Vecchia. This has been Community Forum.